Are you getting in the way of your handmade business moving forward? Is it you that's standing in your way? Yeah, it's time to get out of your own way. So that's what we're going to do today. Welcome to Explore Your Enthusiasm, episode 295 with me, Tara Spiger. Lately, we have been doing a series on how to make your 2020 goals come true. In episodes 292 and 293, I give you lots of applicable step-by-step advice on how to increase sales and keep your sales sustainable. So be sure to check all of that out at taraspiger.com/launch for a whole resource kit about increasing your sales right now. But as I said in that episode, only a small percentage of people will actually be able to follow through with the action plan. I've given you all the steps, and yet very few people will follow through on it. Why? Well, for some listeners, what I shared just isn't applicable. Like maybe you don't have a business, maybe you're not there yet. Maybe you're just starting and you don't have any products, or you haven't figured out your channel of sales yet. Now, for some listeners, growth isn't their primary goal in 2020. Maybe you have more demand than you can possibly supply, so you are not trying to get more sales. Or perhaps your workday has gone totally wonky, and what you want to work on this year is working less, or taking more time off, or stopping work at a certain time. So we're not always in a place of growth. Or maybe you're like I was in 2019, where your life has been upended and your main goal is to just hold on and try to figure out a new way to move forward, even just a new way to do the same things you were doing before. No forward movement, totally new circumstances. Last year, my own focus wasn't on the growth of my business, it was on the growth of my family. So wherever you are is perfect. It's perfectly fine. Growth might not be your goal, so you might not take advantage of it. But what about those listeners who do have products, who have a channel to sell them through, who have the goal to increase their sales in 2020? Or maybe your goal is something else, but you're not acting on it. So why don't you follow through on what you want to follow through on? We hit some of those reasons last week in episode 294. You may feel unfocused, you may feel like you don't have enough time, you may feel overwhelmed or stuck in self-doubt. In other words, you're not moving forward because you are holding yourself back the way you feel. Last week, I gave you some homework. I asked you to write down how you were holding yourself back and why you might be doing that. And if you skip the homework, you can hit pause right now and write it down, or even record it as a voice memo to yourself if you're in the car going someplace. So why are you doing this? Well, without hearing your answers, I can make an educated guess, because this is what stops me, and this is what stops most of the people I work with. Fear and belief. We're going to talk about fear today, and we're going to talk about belief next week. So fear that you won't be safe, fear that everyone will realize I have no idea what I'm doing, and that they, or you, will think it's all a scam and everyone will hate me and I'll be broken alone. Fear that I'll get it wrong, that people will see me get it wrong, and then they will all leave and my business will fall apart and I will be broke and alone. Now that's kind of intense, right? I don't usually share my fears that boldly with total strangers, but that's why this fear is so good at holding us back. We never look directly at it. We never say what it is. We never define it. So it just bubbles up underneath the surface and we feel a kind of uneasiness or a nervousness or some self-doubt. We just don't feel quite right. So we don't step forward. It feels like it's just not quite sure what's happening, but I guess I should move forward. So what do we do about it? How do we move past it? The good news is, we have already done the first step. The first step is to bring it to conscious awareness so that we can see it. So it stops running the show behind the scenes and we start looking at it face to face. Then we need to acknowledge it for what it is. It's not that we suck. It's not a sign that you need to stop. It is not that you need to do more or learn more or be more or get more confident. Fear holding you back is a natural part of growth and exploration and going in new places. Your fear is your sweet little confused brain trying to keep you safe. That's its whole job. It's saying, hey there, I don't know about that. I need to keep you alive, so back away from the unknown. And if you've ever experienced trauma, whether it was a one-time acute trauma like an attack or an ongoing trauma like an unsafe childhood, your brain is a specialist in spotting danger and keeping you away from it. It might spot danger where there's not any. This may be why you experience something that seems simple, like talking to strangers in your craft booth or posting a personal post on Instagram, as completely terrifying, and it prompts your fight, flight, or freeze mechanism. You're terrified at a level that other people seem to find it easy. That's your trauma brain. It's okay. It's trying its best. Now, understanding and accepting this about yourself and your sweet little confused brain is vital to you moving forward. It shifts your focus from, I need to push my way forward, to let's find a gentle way about this. Because you know what happens? When you try to push your way forward, your fear pushes back. When you gently find a way to feel safe while doing the thing you want to do, your fear settles down a little bit. It thinks, okay, you know I'm trying to keep you safe and you're trying to keep you safe. Your fear just wants to be noticed and heard. So we've identified it through writing it down. We recognize that it's trying to keep us safe. But how do we hear it? How do we hear it without letting it tell us what to do and run the show? So it's kind of like a toddler in that you can hear it out, make it feel heard and understood without letting it decide on what you're doing. So you let it have its say. You let your fear tell you what's the worst that can happen. Now, Tim Ferriss calls this fear setting. It was in his book from a long time ago, The 4-Hour Work Week. And it's like the opposite of goal setting. But it's really important if you want to move forward with a goal to not just look at the positive, but also look at the fear and the worst case scenario for what might happen. In Marie Forleo's book, she has a version of this exercise in her book, Everything is Figure Outable. And that tells you, that's not just me that's saying you should do this. This is an exercise that many, many people use to help their brain calm down to do big, scary new things. So let's just try it. Now for this part, you need to pull out a piece of paper. So I either want you to hit pause now and pull out a piece of paper. If you're in some place you can't write, make a note to yourself that you're going to come back and do this today. Answer the question. What am I afraid of actually happening? What is the absolute worst case scenario if that fear comes true? So if the worst thing happens, what is the worst case scenario of what's going to happen after that? And then what else horrible will happen because of that? Now, if you've listened to your fear, you've let it really unspool its dark fantasy, it's time to apply some reality to your fear. You don't want to do this until you really let it all out though. So spend some time, pause, let it all come out. Worst case scenario, don't just think it, but write it down. Now, to apply reality, you want to ask yourself, if that happened, if this thing I've written down happened, the absolute worst case scenario, what would you do? How could you come back from it? What skills, abilities, and experiences do you have that you could use? In other words, you today, you're not starting from zero. You're not starting from scratch. Even if everything was taken away, you still are you, and you have all your experiences and skills and knowledge that you take forward in getting out of whatever you get into. So how would you do it? Write that down as well. Now, when I've done this with Starship Captains, we always have to take a deep breath. We feel a little shaken and a little relieved. It is scary to think of all that can go wrong. Straight up, it's scary. But I bet you notice that your worst case scenario is kind of like figure outable. There's very little you're going to do in your business that's going to shake the core of what you value, that's going to break apart your whole life. Your Etsy shop is not going to physically damage your loved ones. Your Instagram post or your email newsletter is not going to break your real, true friendships. Unless you become a skydiving instructor, it is unlikely that your business is going to cause you bodily harm. So how do you feel? How do you feel after looking at that? Let's take a deep breath. Do you feel a little able to move forward? Do you feel like maybe you could handle things if they go wrong? Now, if not, I gotta ask, did you do this in your head or did you do this in writing? When you just think it through, your brain often distracts you with other stuff and you don't really go all the way with it. So you gotta write it down. Now listen, this is not a one-time thing. If it were, I would be fearless and unwavering since 2006 when I did this for the first time. And y'all have met me, you've heard me. I'm not fearless. Instead, this allows us to take the next step, which is all we need for now. We don't have to be fearless for the rest of our life. We just have to be able to take the next small step to move forward. But it is very likely that the fear is going to jump back up when you do the next unknown thing. Elizabeth Gilbert actually talks about this in her book Big Magic, which I highly recommend for creatives. She says that we may never be able to get fear out of the car. When we're on our journey, it may always be in the car with us, but we can stop fear from driving the car or grabbing the steering wheel or pumping the brakes. We can ride with fear next to us. We can acknowledge the work it's trying to do, which is keep us safe. We can appreciate it for that and still choose not to let it run the show. That's the bad news. You're going to have to do this a lot. If you want to grow and develop new things and see new things you've never experienced or seen before in your business or in your life, you're going to do it a lot. I need to acknowledge and listen to fear every time I set a new goal, every time I start a new project. Sometimes I have to do it right before a speaking gig when I get really nervous. And I had to do it before I became a foster mom. Like, am I wrecking my life? I had to do some fear setting and then look at reality. Every time I level up my business or my life, I have to do it again. But here's what I hope you take from this podcast episode. You are holding yourself back because your brain is trying to keep you safe. It is doing its job. You are a smart, capable, adorable human who is capable of so much more than you think if you find a way to gently move past your stuck places. You don't need to feel or be fearless to take the next step. No one who's taking the next step is fearless. You are going to build confidence through action. Now that we've addressed the fear, next week we're going to address the belief, because that's the other thing that might be holding you back and getting in your way, so that you can actually follow through on what you want to do this year. I would love to hear about you if you did this experience, what you're afraid of. You can come tell us in the Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/tarsweiger, or DM me on Instagram. I'm at tarsweiger. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for dealing with your fear. It doesn't just help you, it helps everyone in your life, the whole world. So thank you for listening. I'm wishing you a week full of peace and courage and enthusiasm.